set foot on the land at all, even though, you know, they could have been the first Europeans on New Zealand soil. It wasn't until 100 years later, Captain James Cook from England, he was in Tahiti, and he picked up a guy there named Tapuia, who was the famous voyager and explorer as well. And between them, they were going to search for the Great Southern Continent, which wasn't New Zealand, by the way, but there's all this landmass in the Northern Hemisphere, and they thought, surely there's another continent down here to balance out the Southern Hemisphere to the Northern Hemisphere. So basically, New Zealand's on a continent. It's not one of the official continents. It's called Zealandia, and 94% of it's underwater. So the 6% that's above water is what makes up New Zealand, basically like a mountain range on the continent. And if 100% of the continent was above water, then it would only be 16 kilometres off the coast of Queensland, Australia. So you could almost have a ferry crossing between the two, you know, instead of having to fly 3 hours, whatever it is. Kind of like a ferry crossing what we have between the North and the South Island, and that takes 4 hours. You know, it looks quite close, but that's 4 hours, because you're going to go Wellington, out of the harbour, down, across, up, and then down into Picton. That's why it's 4 hours long. So between them, they came across a place called Gisborne, which is on the east coast of the North Island, and that's the first place in the world to see the sunrise. And from there, this is where the very first trade happened with the Māori, between the Māori and the Europeans, 1769 October. Luckily, James Cook had Tapuia on board, who was almost acted like the translator, and he was of, you know, similar colour of the Polynesians and spoke a similar language. So they traded for, they were out of fresh food and water, and they needed repairs done to the ship, the Endeavour, which the Cody tree, I mentioned before, the Cody tree, which was really good for repairing the ship. And in return, the Māori were after like specific tools that they had on the Endeavour, blankets for the winter months, and muskets. So that's where the very first trade happened there. And then James Cook and his Tapuia and the rest of the crew went up to the Cape Reinga, which is the very top of New Zealand. You know, the famous lighthouse is up there. It's got that famous signpost, which has got London that way, Tokyo, USA. You know that sign's up the very top of New Zealand. And then from there they went down the west coast, and they mapped out New Zealand at the same time. So the map you see today was mapped out by those two. Except they missed out a couple places. They missed out Milford Sound, which is very famous. You know, some of you have been there, very famous. They didn't think they could get the ship in